All right, here's where I get into the weeds, and this is where you all get to tell me that I'm crazy, okay? What I've done is I've mined some, it might have been one of my students. Courtney, did you do this one? No, I don't think so. Sometimes I claim credit for the work my students do. We put together this wool micron graph, and what this shows is the various microns of wool over time and the clean wool prices reported by the Livestock Marketing Information Center, okay, which is ultimately coming from the USDA, all right? Now, chances are, I think we can ignore these colors right here, clear up to 21 micron. What I want to pay attention to is the area probably where we excel in the Columbia breed, this 25 and 26 micron. So I know this is hard, it's a lot of colors, but this 25 and 26 micron is this maroon line and this dark green line, okay? You can see they run close to each other, as you can imagine. And then when we get to some of these challenges over the past couple of years with international markets, you see all grades of wool start to drop off, okay? My question to you, especially those of us that don't come from major wool producing regions, or maybe we haven't put a ton of emphasis on wool over time, is what have you been getting for your wool? And that's a rhetorical question. I don't need you to answer right now. Afterwards, I'd love to know. But if you're producing a 30 micron wool clip, how easy is it to market at the price point that you need? And so one of the beauties I have of coming here and speaking to a group of purebred sheep producers is that I work with a lot of purebred sheep producers and I don't get to play favorites. But some of these decisions that we make in terms of where our breed should be should come from what were we established to do, but also under current market dynamics, is the fiber we're producing marketable? Is it consistently marketable? But even from a very simplistic standpoint, are we getting enough per fleece to cover our shearing costs? I think that's an important non-emotional economic break-even for us to think about. And chances are, over the past couple years, that's hard to do in the traditional commodity marketing system, okay? I think I'm always amazed as I talk with folks about what is the true value of my wool clip. I think sometimes it's in the eye of the beholder, but generally speaking, as a basis to start, what is the value of our wool? And of course, there's a lot of factors like micron, yield, vegetable matter contamination. The place to start always is to go to the USDA AMS National Wool Review, okay? I think that is a good place, which unfortunately doesn't always have the information of what's being traded here in the States. They get the international values for these various microns of wool, and then they take 75 to 85% of those values from Australia by micron, and they give us what that value is. I have found that especially for coarser or medium wools, that value is not always accurate, at least what's being bought in our region, okay? I'm not referring to the hand spinning market. I think we could have a whole talk on that. I think that is a tremendous opportunity for this breed in particular to really help maximize the wool revenue that we could receive when we don't usually get the value we deserve in the commodity market. This handout that I gave you, here's some examples and some websites for you to go to the horse's mouth itself and get the actual values and how you would convert those, and an example of how you could convert those to US dollars. But back to the break-even table, and this is something that I just think is interesting for us to think about, okay? Now bear with me for a sec. This looks extremely busy, but it's not. So here we have the fleece weight. These areas in gray, these cells in gray are what we can take back to our place. What are we currently shearing on average as a fleece weight, okay? And then you would determine what your shearing cost is, okay? And from that, so if my fleece weight was 11 pounds and I was paying $5 to shear that ewe, my break even just on that shearing cost is about 45 cents per pound. Greasy, okay? Now I highlighted some cells there based off of that historic price data that is reported, which are areas that are pretty hard to make break even under current marketing of wool. So a lot of these areas where we're shearing a really light fleece and we're over $1 greasy, which would be approximately $2 clean, that's pretty hard to do when you're shearing a 31 micron fleece. Not as hard to do when you're shearing a 58s or a 60s grade, so a 23 to 26 micron. But I like these kind of tools, folks, because they just force us to acknowledge, are we paying for things or are we not paying for things? And I realize, myself included, that my passion for the sheep industry exceeds sometimes the monetary benefit. I think we all could agree that if you're here in this room, you care about Columbia sheep breed and the sheep industry in general. But these kind of unemotional tools really make us take a gut check of where do we want to be? Are we okay losing a little money on the wool clip? Are we okay making a little bit of money? But these types of break-even analyses really help us take a hard look. So again, just to reiterate, I anticipate that most of you are in this range, probably with the exception of some ewe lambs or some yearlings, you're probably shearing above at this 9-pound threshold. But with your shearing costs and how challenging it is to get shears, I think this is a good tool for you to think about, and it's in your handout. Okay, so I promised you I wasn't going to bore you to tears, just a monotone lecture. And I'm boring my throat to tears. How many of you have seen this table before? Raise your hand. It talks about, basically in priority, what are the most important fiber characteristics that we need to pay attention to based off of economic return, okay? Now, I realize that this may be different for some of you, but as a rule of thumb, yield, or what percentage clean wool is in your clip or in a fleece, is the most important economic determinant of what you get for your wool, okay? So if you had again, just to go back to the principle of yield, if you shear a 10-pound fleece and you have a 40% yield, that means only 4 pounds of that 10-pound fleece are going to produce clean wool, okay? So you can imagine, since most wool is traded on a clean basis, a 60% yield is going to have more clean wool yield than a 40% yield, so your gross revenue is going to be much greater. We can agree on that. So yield is really important, even though it's not something we can always control based on our management. Micron is the second most important in terms of how wool is priced. Whether it's the most important for you, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying based on the commodity market, how wool is priced, these are the two most important ones. But then we start getting into some gray area, okay? And this gray area will be in the eye of the beholder, okay? If your wool warehouse person is trying to sell a premium 19 micron clip, vegetable matter needs to be below 1% or close to it, okay? If we're in the farm flock in the Midwest, chances are our ability to have a 1% vegetable matter is probably pretty limited. So there's all these other things that we keep in mind.